A lot of important things came out of the Seattle Kraken exit interviews, and we're going to get to pretty much all of them this offseason since it is a long offseason. But perhaps nothing was more important than this right here.
Are you ready to confirm a starting goalie?
You know what? Actually, I'm going to do it every game next year. I'm doing it because this year not confirming. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. We will have confirmed goaltenders, at least for right now, next season. But in seriousness, let's talk about the exit interviews and, of course, the Kansas City Mavericks. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Erica L. Ayala. I've been your host of Locked On Kraken, from the beginning. Our first outing as a podcast was at the expansion draft. Well, I guess technically also I had that announcement of Dave Haxtell when I was by the Brooklyn Bridge, though that wasn't an official outing. I was at the Seaport. Anyway, the point is we've been here for a while bringing you up-to-date news. And as you know, especially if you've been listening since season 1 of the Seattle Kraken and of the podcast, we've got exit interviews. We didn't take as much care with exit interviews, or as much time, I should say, with exit interviews last year. A little bit of a different scenario, although I did talk about how much I really wished we had heard from Martin Jones. Also, of course, I wanted to hear from my guy who I knew the end was near, but Ryan Donato. Those two we did not hear from last year, and I ranted about that a lot last season. So yeah, at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you some roster predictions based on exit interviews. It's a little bit of a combo of like actual analysis and just like vibes, you know, like my auntie vibes. So we'll do that at the end of the show. But if you listen to the open, then you heard Dave Haxtell say that he will confirm goalies next year. Now, I put that in just because I thought it was a great way to end his exit interview and media availability to end the season. Dave also said at the time that he did the exit interviews, he was about halfway through player interviews, and the focus really wasn't on individual. And I actually want you to hear a clip in earnest from Dave Haxtell. He had a lot of really interesting things to say about Matty Beniers and his progression. I thought it best to save that for when we do the Matty Beniers episode, but I want you to remember that I said that because I think a lot of people are getting things maybe a little misconstrued when it comes to Matty B. So we're going to hear from Dave in a minute. But I want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose, when you visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So let's hear what Dave had to say in the beginning of his clip here, and really breaking things down. He had an interesting answer later on, but again, we're going to have time to go through these exit interviews, but I think that his opening remarks are a really good summary of his 35 minutes. He gave us 35 minutes. I love it. And a lot of really good nuggets. But here's Dave Haxtell once again talking from the exit interviews that the Seattle Kraken held last week.
A couple of days is, it's a little bit to gain some perspectives, and you started your question with the ups and downs, and that's one of the things that stands out here. As we're sitting on day one of the National Hockey League playoffs, and we're not part of it. The inconsistencies in our play throughout the year have brought us to this point. There's a lot of substance within that lead to those results, and those are the things. I'm about halfway through my player meetings right now, Most of the player meetings have been really good, just straight up honest discussions, not necessarily individually based. We've got some really smart guys. We've got some great veterans, and everybody cares a lot. So, today is, as we gain perspective, it's also day one or day two of working towards, solving some of the issues that led to some of our inconsistencies, and making sure we're doing the right things to work towards a different outcome.
Are you ready to
So, again, a good summary of the season, really. Later, and we'll talk about this off season, but later on, Dave was asked a similar question. You heard him talk about, you asked about the ups and downs, and he was asked, I'm going to forget exactly how it was phrased, but really to categorize, kind of the specific moments that he considered the highs and lows, if I remember correctly. And, Dave was very honest in saying that he hadn't really given it a lot of thought. He obviously talked about the Winter Classic. Sorry, spoiler alert, excuse me. I think many of us who were there or even who witnessed it and are truly Seattle Kraken fans, we saw that as a really great opportunity for the city. And Dave mentioned that. But, as far as the other side of that, maybe the chances and the opportunities where that consistency was really a bugaboo. It took him a little bit to pinpoint something specific. Throughout his 35 minutes, though, he does talk about how the Seattle Kraken started the season, and that when you start a season that way, it's not insurmountable, but it's extremely difficult. So again, there's a lot to analyze about this particular Seattle Kraken team. And so I guess that's good news, because we will be chugging along as long as the NHL season goes. So, and by that I mean we'll still have the off season, but the schedule for us maintains the same, whether the Kraken are in the playoffs or not. And then we'll go to an off season schedule once it's the league off season. Anyway, coming up next on Locked On Kraken, we're actually going to switch gears, and I want you to hear from one head coach to another head coach. You'll hear a conversation that I recorded between myself, Erica L. Ayala, and Tad O'Had. And if you're everydayers or OGers, I've been talking to Tad for a while. He is the general manager and head coach of our ECHL affiliate, the Kansas City Mavericks, and they play game four, against the Tulsa Oilers tonight in round one of the ECHL playoffs. They lead the series 3-0, so can ice the series right now. I want you to hear a little bit about what Tad and I talked about. Mostly, we spoke today, Monday, so we'll be talking about what the team focused on, but also he was pretty open about their process. They decided to travel back to Kansas City between their last game Friday and today's game Monday. And I think he had really interesting insight about what recovery looks like, what the process looks like, and even what the travel accommodations look like, which I was not expecting. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. As I mentioned earlier, today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NHL. Oh, sad. And the NBA. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on everything. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs and slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken is also brought to you by our new friends at Policygenius. Now, Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. And who wouldn't want to do that? Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you talk through it. It's easy to compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks and to find the lowest price. Policygenius is going to give you unbiased advice from their licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers can be found. And some of the things that they say is that this is the best fit for their needs. So if checking off life insurance is on your to-do list, you can do it with no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL, or you can click the link that you find in the description for this episode. Get free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. Again, visit policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. We bring you your favorite team every single day. Again, your host, Erica L. Ayala here. And next, you're going to hear a clip of Tad and I speaking from this morning. Tad is, again, the general manager and head coach of our very own Kansas City Mavericks. So we've got our ECHL team and our NHL team are both in the postseason, and the ECHL team did not get a first round bye. We talked about that with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. The Firebirds actually had to get an OT winner, if I remember correctly, over the weekend, but they will not have to play in the first round, the Firebirds. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about the Firebirds on, of course, Friday. But for our Kansas City and Kansas City Mavericks Monday, our team will take on the Tulsa Oilers tonight, and it will be a 7 p.m. Central Time game. So that's, 9 p.m. Pacific Time. And they win this and they advance. Just a few things to prep you. So again, 3-0 lead for the series. I did speak to Tad after Friday's game. You'll hear some of what we talked about, fighting through the pressure that Tulsa puts on them in the neutral zone. You also will hear me talk about moving the puck and using some of their players to be able to break through that neutral zone. Part of that is because one of our goalies got a goalie assist on Friday, and we talked a lot about that. So it was Cam that got the goalie assist, and you'll hear between Jack and Cam the decision making and why Tad, at least in this series, is going to alternate goaltenders. It will be Jack LaFontaine starting tonight, but I thought he had a really interesting approach to how to handle goaltending, and you'll hear him bring up a stat that of the 3 goaltenders that played for the Kansas City Mavericks this year, each of them has at least 16 wins. And so that's an advantage that this team has. But as we've talked about before with the Seattle Kraken, perhaps we're overusing goaltenders, and that's not something that we see with the Kansas City Mavericks. Anyway, if you've never heard me and Tad speak, because either you're not with our Insiders program, which you should definitely become a Locked On Kraken Insider, or you just haven't caught one of those episodes, I think you're really going to enjoy it. And part of the reason that I love speaking to Tad is he's very forthcoming and also very direct with his insight, but he is a great hockey mind. So without further ado, here's my conversation with general manager and head coach of the Kansas City Mavericks, Tad O'Had.
For practice, we kept things, relatively light, but we did want to get our puck touches in. And I thought it was good. I thought, of course, at the beginning was maybe a little bit sleepy, but we got into it. I liked the energy. I will say something I commend this group for is once they get going, they've got a lot of good energy and they're having fun. And enjoying the process right now. And that's honestly, that's one of the major keys.
Yeah, for sure. And, it'll be a travel day, it sounds like, for the squad. So what are some of the things that you really try to get the team to focus on, if it's anything that you and the coaching staff even have to kind of dictate at this point? But, what do you like a game day to be like for the team?
Well, definitely a routine. That is one thing that's very, very important when it comes to a game day routine. And this is something that, is very important. Just because it's playoffs doesn't mean you have to change what you've done all season long. And so because we practiced yesterday, today was an optional skate for the guys. And really the only guys that skated were the guys that weren't playing this evening. And then we arrive here, we'll pack the bus and get on the bus. We always travel on a sleeper bus. And so that means that the guys are able to get some sleep and lie down and get some rest. I think that's really important, and we commend our ownership for allowing us to do that. Right now, rest and recovery is most important. And so we talk a lot about, 8 hours plus of sleep, hydration, salt intake, sodium intake, electrolytes. Our training staff does a really good job with that, but we want them to be in routine. And we aren't, we've played a lot of hockey now. And so mental rest is just as important. Yesterday, wanted to get the guys in and out of the rink and not thinking about hockey, although I think most of them spent the afternoon watching playoff hockey. We want them to, be able to kind of rest their mind.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate you walking me through that. And we know how much recovery is really kind of ingrained now in sports and how we know how it impacts performance. So I appreciate you walking through that. I know something that we talked about after last game on Friday, as you mentioned earlier, is a little bit of that rest, or maybe thinking about how the other team perhaps doesn't have that advantage, particularly when it comes to goaltending. And, we talked a little bit about how you've been able to have that luxury of switching back and forth for goalies. So one is just to walk through that again and what that process was like specifically for this Tulsa series. And then, of course, the obvious game day question, do you know who's starting in net tonight?
Yes. And so one of the things with regards to our lineup and our strength all season has been our depth. Our depth is really what helps this team be successful, and it allows us to really play a complete 60 minutes. If you look, we have led the league by a large margin in third period goals. And although I give all of our credit to the players for doing that, a part of that has to do with the shared responsibilities of the depth of the lineup. And that's not only in goaltending. We've got 3 goaltenders with 16 plus wins, but also our defense. We've got 8 very rock steady D-men, and then we've got 14 forwards. And so one of the things that we try to do there is get a variety of guys involved. And through this series, we've done that. We'll make 2 changes this evening, and we'll have Nolan Sullivan centering, as well as we will also have David Noel back in the lineup. Jack LaFontaine, he'll start the game. And so him and Kel Morris have shared 2 and 2. And we constantly have conversations with regards to goaltending and lineup. And I'll tell you what, I love the fact between our goaltending coach, our associate coach, myself, we play a lot of devil's advocate. We'll bat things around. They kind of joke sometimes, like, I'll kill a dead horse. But we want to have those conversations of what's best for the team, what makes sense. And, in our case, we're very confident in either goaltender. And so to be able to also get both of them in a rhythm, because there's going to be a time where maybe only one of them's playing, but let's get everybody involved now. Tulsa is kind of the opposite right now. And, that's a very well-coached team. I think a lot of, Tulsa's coaching staff, but the Junket kid, who is an excellent goaltender, he has played. So now the last 9 games, it'll be straight.
Right.
And, that's a lot. They were battling to get a playoff spot at the end. So he's been in a lot of pressure situations, and that can do 2 things. One, it can get you into a rhythm, or it can be just a lot of very taxing on the body and the mind. And, ultimately I'm just more concerned with ourselves. And so that's why we've been lucky to be able to go with Kel Morris and Jack LaFontaine and rotate them. Both of them have been playing excellent, but it's important for us to be able to get to Junka early tonight and make his life difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you, again, walking us through that. Again, going back to now Kansas City, I remember you saying after Friday's game, you really wanted this team to take it one game at a time, really focus inwardly. I'm curious, I know we talked about what you wanted the focus to be, but were there any directives that you were getting from the players? I know you had practice yesterday, and were there some things that the players had at the front of mind that they really wanted to sharpen up for this Game 4 coming up?
You know what? That's a great question. We listened to the players quite a bit. No, they wanted to get out on the ice. They wanted to feel good, get their puck touches. I think for the most part, we kept things, pretty standard with regards to the things we wanted. They've liked the routine that we've done throughout the year. And those have been conversations with our captains and leadership group. And that was something, how we travel the day of, how we deal with pregame skates, things like that. And so I feel like those conversations were had, honestly, back in October. And so we've just carried them throughout the season. It's very, very important to have our leadership group and our captains take control and have them really buy into what we're doing. And so this is stuff that we've been doing since October. So no, not much had changed there. And so that was good.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'll get you out of here on this one, Tad, but we talked about Tulsa, whether it's this series or honestly just throughout the series that you've played against them, that they can perhaps cause a little bit of difficulty when they're clogging up the neutral zone. And that really puts a lot of emphasis on being able to transition from the defensive end through into your offensive zone. What are the keys, or I'll phrase it this way. When the Mavericks are meeting success, being able to run through all zones, what does that look like? And who are some of the players, either individuals or position-wise, who help you play that kind of game?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So first and foremost, when we're playing as all five, when we've tried to do things individually this year, that's where we've ran into issues. And so for us to be able to, counter, attack their forecheck, we need to be working in the unison of 5 men. We need to be fast in transition. We need to be managing pucks and not looking for hope plays, not throwing pucks away, because Tulsa's too good. They'll pounce on that. They'll take advantage of mismanaged pucks, and that's how they generate a fair amount of their offense. And so when we're working in a unison of 5, we're transitioning pucks quickly, and then we're really advancing the puck in high decisions, not just throwing it away, eliminating those hope plays. We have success players that are very good with that. I think Jake McLaughlin, Duquette, and Jones have been excellent in that. I think our forward group, throughout our forward group, has been strong with that. But one of the things we talk a lot about is to beat pressure short passes. And we want to have a lot of connectivity, short passes, accurate passes, and work as 5. And when we've done that, we tend to have success. We mismanage pucks when we try to go 1-on-3 at a blue line, and then we transition and lose the puck, and it's back down the other ways when we faltered.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, it's always a pleasure and a delight to chat with you and get to know this Mavericks team a little bit better. And I'm sure fans will enjoy hearing from you directly as you continue on, hopefully what we hope is, I should say, a long run here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your professionalism and wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. That was general manager and head coach of our very own Kansas City Mavericks, Tad O'Had. Always a delight to chat with. Like I said, great hockey mind, the winningest coach in Kansas City Mavericks history. And he's told me time and time again that the organization, and he's been with the organization for a while, the organization has not run seamlessly, as seamlessly as it has with the Firebirds and the Kraken. And I love hearing that, because I think some of what we're seeing at the Seattle Kraken level is that, I don't know if you want to call it buy-in, perhaps it is, and especially this year, and I'll talk about that coming up next, but whether it's buy-in, aces in places, the proper personnel to execute the goal, there's been a disconnect with the overall vision that Dave at least has for the Seattle Kraken and how that is coming out on the ice. And I think we're going to see some changes made. So coming up next, I'm going to run through who who is on the roster now. And we even had a signing over the weekend that I want to talk about, but who we have on the roster now, and if I think they will be at training camp or will they be an off-season move. That's what's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. And listen, if you've heard this show a time or two, you know that I truly love Game Time. It's on my phone right now. I've got a few trips coming up, and anytime I am in a new city, I head to Game Time. If I know there's downtime in my schedule, which is not as often as I would like, but I like in Chicago, when I'm in Chicago, even sometimes when I'm back home, or where my family is in New York, checking Game Time to see if I can find tickets. I always love to see baseball, but especially if the Mets happen to be in town. And of course, I catch the Mariners games as well. I tend to like to sit third base side. That's just a preference of mine. Citi Field, actually, I like first base side a little bit better. But either way, if it's a baseball game or watching one of my favorite bands like Little Dragon, which I did in Seattle when I was there for training camp, I know I can take a look at my seats if they're not GA, general admission. I know I'm getting the best deal, and I know there's the Game Time guarantee. If I find for the same event, in the same row, the same section, a price better than my Game Time price, I get 110% of my purchase back. So listen, we know things are coming up last minute, but you don't need to fuss because you have Game Time to take care of all of your needs. Now, here's what you need to know. Take the guesswork out of Game Time, or out of buying tickets, by heading to Game Time. You can download the app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms will apply, but again, use promo code Locked On NHL once you create your Game Time account. That will get you $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Seattle hockey fans, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tad O'Had as much as I did. I really enjoyed talking with Tad, learning from Tad. He's a great hockey mind, and I think you saw why right there, because he just gets it. He knows the system. He knows his players. He's communicating with his players a lot. I love to hear it. And I also love to hear that is a symptomatic, that maybe is a little bit dramatic, but hey, I'm a podcaster. It's maybe a little bit, I guess it's coming from the partnership and the vision that is throughout the pipeline. We've heard Tad say that a bunch on this podcast. I've heard Tad say that a bunch in our conversations, whether they were for our insiders, for the podcast, or just him and I kind of getting to know each other a little bit and talking through the pipeline. So I love hearing that. But there is still a lot that we have to do. And some of it comes by just taking a look at this roster, whether it's kind of me and my musings or hearing from players and even Dave Haxtell. There were times throughout this season where the effort, maybe the buy-in wasn't quite there. We know injuries also are a huge part of this. I don't want to diminish how injuries impacted us, but also no excuses. And some of what we were seeing regarding the inconsistency was not only because of injury. And so I'm going to just run through this quickly. Now, Andre Burakovsky is first up. Now, again, I'm going to get to some of the conversations that we did have, whether it was with Dave or some of the players as we move through the offseason for the Seattle Kraken. But what I will say is, for this fast and quick version, yes, I do see Burakovsky on the lineup for next year. And he's one of the players who Dave Haxtell thinks just needs more reps. And I thought that was really good insight. So he will also be one of the players representing their country in the IIHF Worlds. I thought that was interesting. There's actually a few players, including McCann and Tanev, but let's head on. So Burakovsky, yes, I think we see him at training camp. Eberle will see at training camp. Schwartz will see at training camp. Bjorkstrand, Gord, and McCann for sure. Brandon Tanev. Now this is interesting. I'm not sure about Brandon Tanev at this point. I haven't been sure about Brandon Tanev. I was starting to wonder a little bit last season, and then about a little less than midway, probably. I think there are things that Tanev does that he doesn't get enough credit for. We obviously know he's got lots of juice. For whatever reason, that hasn't been translating into the kind of effectiveness and efficiency that I think we need, which is offense for Brandon Tanev. So he's definitely a question for me. I can see it either way. I'm not bullish one way or another, but I think he's a question mark. Yanni Gourde for me is not a question mark. Or excuse me, I already talked about that. We're going the other way. Kyler Yamamoto, big question mark for me. Tomas Tatar, maybe even a bigger question mark for me. Both Yamamoto and Tatar had their time, their spotlight, but it seemed to kind of flicker out. And when we saw scratches towards the end of the season, they were among them. And Pierre-Edouard Bellemare kind of making his way. Speaking of Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, I believe him, Tatar, nor Yamamoto were among the players that we got exit interviews from. And so, it's not a foolproof kind of way of thinking about things, but I just want to double check quickly because they were kind of being uploaded as I was doing other things, focusing actually on the Mavericks. So I want to make sure I didn't miss any, but I don't recall seeing either one of those players. I mentioned on the other episode, I guess it would have been Friday's episode, this is for Ron Francis. I'm doing a lot of things right now. I mentioned on Friday's episode that Pierre-Edouard Bellemare was perhaps requested after he had already left the facility. Again, not a foolproof, but interesting to see who hasn't spoken to media. So no Yamamoto, no Tomas Tatar, no Bellemare. So just in case you were wondering, but these are some of the thumbnails. We're going to get through a lot of these guys. Matty B, Vince Dunn, his video is up now. Did a little bit from Dave, and you'll hear more from him. All right, let's move on. Ellie Tolvanen, maybe more on the fence than I would have thought. We did this exercise a couple of weeks or maybe even months ago now. Ellie Tolvanen would have been a surefire for me. Now I'm not so sure. Matty Beniers, yes. Ty Cartier, yes. Bellemare, I'm going to say no. I don't think it was a good fit. And if his productivity is not going to go up offensively, which he himself has said that that's not his game, his leadership, I don't know if it was enough. So I'm saying no to Bellemare, even though I really liked having him on the team for a lot of different reasons. But this is a hockey decision for me. Vince Dunn, yes. Oleksiak, yes. Larson, yes. Dumo, we have him through 25, 26. I was not high on Dumo, you might remember early on, but he's grown on me. So I'm going to say maybe. I'm going to say maybe. I mean, we could always trade him, I guess. I don't know if he has a no trade clause or what's going on there, but if we can get something and that really works for the Kraken and we have to give up a defenseman, I'm going to go with Dumoulin. Will Borgen, I would say definitely, how do I want to phrase this? I could see him leaving. I'm not advocating for it. I know the fan base certainly doesn't want it, but I think we should consider Borgen a little bit more than my gut is telling me that he will be. So my gut is telling me absolutely no question. I think there is maybe a little bit more of a question, not necessarily because he's not good for us. I think we could also utilize his capital and how good he has been with us to get something even better. And that's a better fit for right now. And that's how I feel about Borgen. Riker, I think we're going to see. Certainly in training camp, I think if anyone, if not both of those guys don't come in, we got to see who else is invited to training camp, even from our AHL team. But I think Riker has made a pretty strong case. So yeah, that's what I like. Yeah, Philip Grubauer, Joey Dax. I say yes. Drieger, no. I think we're going to move on from Drieger. I know a lot of people are not going to be thrilled about that, but I've been kind of feeling it for a while now anyway. So yeah, we need to keep Joey. Philip, I know some people love Philip Grubauer. I am indifferent at best. I think he gets a lot more slack than he deserves, but I'm not in love with Philip Grubauer for the Seattle Kraken. I tell you what I do love, though, that great episode that Allison did with Philip in kind of like his happy place. And I thought that was fantastic. I think it's actually, I don't remember if it's up for an award or if it actually won. I'll do some recon on that and get back to you. It's just escaping me right now, but I thought that was fantastic. So I do love that. I love Philip Grubauer's personality. This is more about, I just don't know if, let me put it this way. Let me make it clear as day how I feel. If the Seattle Kraken are serious about making changes and I would argue improvements to the lineup, yes, absolutely. Give me Philip Grubauer every day, all day, because I see the value. And he's had to put in a lot of work for us, as have all of our goaltenders who've ever played a minute for the Seattle Kraken. So let me say it that way. If we're not serious about making some changes, then you might as well just get rid of Philip Grubauer and hope that you get something good in return that becomes gold. But if we're not serious, then we're always going to overwork Philip Grubauer. We're always going to overwork Joey Daccord, and that's not fair to them, because there are things, in my opinion, that can be done to make this team better. And it's wild to me. I think I mentioned Justin Schultz probably in passing, because I don't see us getting rid of him. I don't think we should. Or Jaden Schwartz, excuse me. I didn't mention Justin Schultz. We'll get to Justin in a minute. Jaden Schwartz kind of said, our defense was pretty solid. And I don't understand where that comes from. Speaking of defense, Justin Schultz. I like Justin a lot, but I'm going to stick with what I said last offseason, coming into training camp this year and throughout the regular season. If we're getting rid of some blue liners, Justin's got to be top 3, I think. Not because I like Justin for our team. I really do. Because of what he does defensively, that for the most part, we don't get from other guys. Now, he's made some defensive errors for sure, but so have we as a team, and a part of me wonders if I look a play or two ahead of like some just egregious Justin errors, how much of that is, I'm just curious. I honestly don't know the answer. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I honestly would just love to make a case for Justin, because I like Justin for this team. But I think it's probably, I think it's probably up. And it's an easier, arguably, move because he's a UFA, whereas Brian Dumoulin, you're looking at a trade. So same with Borgen. So maybe Schultz, his time is done. But we did hear from him, so we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll do some more thinking. But that one was hard for me. I like the potential of Justin's game, but is he too old to just rely on potential? I think that's fair. And I think that's also kind of where we need to be with some of the guys that are veterans. Right? We don't need to believe in their potential. They need to show up for the team in a big way. We need that to move forward. So All right, those are my fast-ish and quick-ish thoughts regarding the lineup. I'm sure I'll change them a million gazillion times, but it's a tough exercise, especially again, like everyone has their favorites. I've been pretty honest with who my favorites are. Justin, I don't know if I wouldn't call him a favorite, but I definitely favor him. That's basically the same thing. He's not a Ryan Donato favorite of mine, but I like I said, I like the potential, but we got to play for more than that. And it's time. And I think more often than not, the Seattle Kraken as an entire entity are able to do things and move in a way where they're having, forthright conversations. I know there were some quotes about Alex Wenberg, and I did find them interesting, but maybe not as salacious as some. But we can talk about that as, Alex and the Rangers are still in the playoffs. So I guess I'll toss in a game scorer every once in a while. Anyway, that's our episode. That's our Monday episode. Kansas City Mavericks play tonight. AHL. We'll talk a little bit more about that throughout the week. I'll sprinkle it in, but we'll get intensive on Friday for Friday's episode. But that's going to do it, folks. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Hold fast. Stay true. Let's go Kraken. Let's go Mavericks. And when the time comes for round 2, let's get fired up and root for our Firebirds. That's all she wrote. Until next time. Peace out, everybody.